This is 6 Minute English from bbclearningenglish.com.
Hello, I'm Alice.
And I'm Rob.
And this is 6 Minute English. We've had a special request from our listeners in Lugano, Switzerland, for a more complicated topic this week. We're talking about the structure of the brain and how it could be related to our political beliefs.
Scientists at University College London scanned people's brains and found that certain areas were more or less developed depending on people's political views.
And they found some interesting results. Before we hear them, I have a question for you, Rob. Are you ready?
Of course.
Now, which of these isn't a part of the brain? And please excuse my pronunciation. A. Corpus callosum. B. Tomatosensory cortex. C. Pons.
Well, my Latin isn't that great, but I think I'll choose B, tomatosensory cortex. It doesn't sound real to me.
OK, well, as usual, I won't tell you the answer now, but we'll find out at the end of the programme. Now, let's learn a bit more about this connection between the structure of the brain and a person's political beliefs. Let's think about the different ways we can talk about these. If someone is left-wing,
they are considered to have liberal views.
And if they are right-wing,
if they are right-wing, they are thought to be more conservative.
Scientists carried out MRI scans on 2 British members of Parliament, MPs, as well as 90 other students and postgraduates. Their hypothesis, the theory they're testing to see if it is correct or not, is to find out if there is any difference in their brains.
These MRI scans can measure the thickness of the grey matter in the brain. That's the outer layer of the brain which varies in thickness and is full of neurons, nerve cells, which are very sensitive.
Here's a BBC Science correspondent, Tom Fielden.
It's time to get down to the serious business of scanning our MPs, one left and one right wing, to see if we can find any differences in the structure of their brains.
Bit of scanner noise coming now.
We're now standing in the control room of our MRI scanner.
Professor Geraint Rees is the director of the Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience at University College London.
We're going to look in detail at the thickness of the grey matter, that is the outer covering of the brain.
The hypothesis we're testing is to see whether there's any significant difference in the shape or structure, the thickness of the grey matter covering the brain between people who self-classify as either left or right wing.
So do people who self-classify themselves, describe themselves as being liberal or conservative, have different shaped brains?
What the scientists found was that people who have thicker grey matter in one area of the brain, the anterior cingulate, describe themselves as being liberal or left-wing, and those with a thinner layer describe themselves as conservative or right-wing. Here's Professor Geraint Rees.
We find there are 2 areas of the brain, one called the anterior cingulate and the other called the amygdala, whose structure seems to vary according to their self-described political attitudes. The anterior cingulate is a part of the brain that's on the middle surface of the brain at the front. And we found that the thickness of the grey matter, where the nerve cells or neurons are, was thicker the more people described themselves as liberal or left-wing, and was thinner the more people described themselves as conservative or right-wing.
That's all very interesting, Alice, but what about people who change their political beliefs as they get older? Does this mean their brain shapes change too?
We don't know yet if brain shape changes as people's political views change. More research needs to be done. But scientist Professor Colin Blakemore from Oxford University says that grey matter can change shape in the brain. For example, even playing computer games for a short period of time a week can change the shape of your grey matter.
We know from lots of other recent studies that the brain, even the grey matter of the brain, the part that's being measured in these studies, can change its organisation incredibly rapidly. Simply teaching someone computer games for a few minutes each week can cause their grey matter in certain areas of the brain to change thickness.
So perhaps even people who seem hardwired to believe certain things may be able to change their minds and the shape of their brains too. Now, before we go, let's answer our question. We heard a couple of terms used to describe parts of the brain, but which of the ones I gave you, Rob, at the beginning of the programme were real?
I think I said the one that sounded like a tomato. It didn't sound like a real part of the brain.
Well, Rob, you're right. The odd one out was the tomatosensory cortex. The corpus callosum and the pons are parts of the brain.
And before we go, let's hear some of the words and phrases that we've used in today's programme. Political beliefs. Political beliefs. Scanned. Scanned. Left wing. Left wing. Liberal. Liberal. Right wing. Right wing. Conservative. Conservative. MRI scans. MRI scans. Hypothesis. Hypothesis. Grey matter. Grey matter. Neurons. Neurons.
Thanks, Rob. Well, we hope you've had fun with us today on 6 Minute English and that you'll join us again next time.
Bye.
Bye.
That was 6 Minute English.